You decided to join me at the party then? Nothing like arriving when everyone's already drunk, is there? But now, what I'm doing today is boarding over those windows that we've blanked off either side of here. And to be honest, I'd not intended filming any of this or doing any kind of video with it, because I just kind of thought, well, I'm just sticking a couple of boards over the windows for now, because we are going to fiberglass it further on in the project. But obviously we're not fiberglassing it at the minute due to the weather. It's too cold and I need to do a bit more study on exactly what I'm doing for fiberglassing. So I thought, well, we'll just put some boards on to keep it weatherproof for now. But then as I've started actually doing it, I've kind of got in my mind I can go a bit more decorative and make them a bit nicer. And obviously they're not going to be permanent, but they'll at least look better than just, in effect, a bit of boarding screwed to outside at boat. Excuse me. So as I've been cutting them, I've already done kind of the first three. I've just got the last one. And I was stood eating my bacon sandwich and I thought, this is actually turning into a bit of a project. So I'll get camera out. So what I'm doing here is, I've got a piece of ply that's basically, it's the thin stuff, 5mm thick, which by chance is about the thickness of the actual fiberglass. So I'm cutting these first off, so that'll in effect fill the void, and then that'll more or less make it smooth all the way along, the thickness of the fiberglass across the board, and then fiberglass again at the other side. What I've then got is some 12mm ply, some nice finished ply, that will cut to a slightly bigger size so it overlaps all the way around, round to the edges and things, make it look lovely, paint it all. Yeah, getting carried away with myself, concentrate on part one. So, what I've done is I've cut the boards to the right size and I'm now just using the glass just to mark off the corners, because obviously that's the shape that I need to fill. So I've got them marked off, get all the PPE on and get cutting. That's that cut then. Didn't have to worry about doing that too accurately, because as I said, that's basically just the infill board, as long as it's the right size. Basically that's there to stop, as I screw the exterior ply on, that's to stop that trying to bow in and pulling in, which would obviously mean it wouldn't sit nice and flush all the way around. So this is kind of a bit of a sacrificial board. That's that cut. Let's get the exterior ply and let's get that cut. Need to be a bit more accurate with that one though, because this is what you're going to see looking at the boat. This then's obviously the piece of ply that we're going to see, though obviously it will be painted. So again, just drawing the arc of the windows on, because I kind of thought, if I'm making it nice and decorative, obviously having a curve to the edges of the window to the boarding will just look a bit better than just a square piece of board. It might, for the short term that it's on there, look more like it was something intended to be on there rather than just a bit of boarding covering an old window frame up. Obviously with this I do need to be a fair bit more accurate cutting. I'd like to have actually cut it on the table saw, where I can get a nice clean perfect straight line down the board, but we're not really imagining how we're going to be doing this. I've not got the table saw set up or anything, so we'll cut it with the jigsaw and just go really nice and steady. I have got a clean cut jigsaw blade in, which basically cuts down to a bare minimum the tear out on the plywood as you're actually cutting. And this edge I am going to router to put a little curve on it, so the top edge, just the very first bit, you'll not see anyway once it's done, and it's going to be painted, sanded, etc. So it's going to look alright. In fact no, it's going to look better than alright, it's going to look brilliant. So what I've done is I've measured and made it basically about 1.5 centimetres top and bottom bigger, so about 3 centimetres taller, 3 centimetres wider than the opening, and that way obviously it'll give a little bit to overlap each side, and then as we put sealant on it'll make it all nice and watertight. So again, gloves, goggles, everything. Let's get cutting. I'll continue on then and cut all the way around. Well, as you can see, I'm having to do that nice and slow, get really nice and accurate. Partly because I'm going to router this, but the way the router works, it's got a little kind of ball bearing that runs along the edge of the wood there, and that's then giving the shape across the top. So obviously if it's rough down here, then that'll translate to the router marks across there. I would say in total that's took me 10 minutes to actually cut that, and that's just because it's getting it so accurate, just taking it nice and steady, especially on them curves there. What I'd also say is what I've deliberately done is this was the factory edge, as you call it. This is the edge that was cut in the factory, so we know that's bang straight. So when I actually come to fit this board, I'll make sure this side is the one that's at the top, because that's what you'll actually see. You'll see that more than the one at the bottom. I mean, this one's basically straight. It might be kind of 1-2 millimetres at most as it goes along the edge. We're cutting it with the jigsaw rather than the table saw. But you'll not notice that at all by the time that's routed. And as I say, sit that to the bottom, keep this one at your eye line. Time for a brew? Must be. So now just going around marking out and pilot drilling and countersinking the holes for where the screws are going to go. And because I'm going to want to take this board off in future, I don't want to just sort of countersink the screws and then fill over the top of them. Because if I do that, it's going to be a bit tricky when it comes to the time of getting them off. So all I'm doing is I'm trying to work out a nice spacing so that the screws are all in the same place all the way around, and it kind of looks like a feature rather than anything else. So I mean, basically what I've done is kind of in each corner I've kind of come in 2.5 centimetres to make sure it's clearing that fiberglass, and then I'm just trying to work out and putting the screws about a 10 centimetre gap apart, which is 4 inches, but obviously it don't work exactly to the boards, so I'm just having to work it out and get them best I can on there. The only thing more beautiful than that is the sound of that whistling kettle. That's them all cut then. We've got 8 boards now to paint, because obviously each window's 2 boards. It's got kind of the inner board and then the board that you'll see. What I'm going to try and do is get both sides of these inner boards painted, and then just the back side of the board that you're going to actually see, because the front side we can do once it's in place. I'll see though, we'll see how I get on and how bored I get, because I really don't like painting. This really is Dawn's job. Although you may have noticed, a lot of stuff's Dawn's job. Over my lifetime so far, I've obviously spent a lot of money on tools, and that is probably the best thing I've ever bought. We've all been there when you open a tin of paint and you get a long screwdriver and that don't quite reach to the bottom, so you end up going outside and getting a stick from garden and mixing it with that, and then you're halfway through doing your wall or your skirting boards and there's a big lump of bark or something that comes off in it, and it's never mixed right doing it that way anyway. Go and buy yourself one of them. Today's top tip. One down, 16 sides to go. 15 sides to go. Are you still watching? This must be like watching paint dry. That's the router setup with the round over bit then that we're going to use. It's only quite shallow. We don't want too much of a curve on it, just to take the edge off. But as you'll see on this slightly larger one, it's got the little bearing, the wheel bearing on there. That's what runs along the edge of the timber and keeps your cut consistent all the way around. And then the curved part is what's actually cutting the shape out the edge of the wood. I've not got it set very deep at the minute. We'll give it a pass over with that, see what we think it looks like. If we think it needs to be a bit more of a curve, I can adjust the router so that more of the actual bit is showing, and then it'll cut a deeper groove all the way around. So. That's them all routed then, and there's just an odd rough spot, so I'll give it a quick sand over all the way around all the edges. You tend to find if you actually router in, if you like proper timber, you don't really get any rough spots, but with it being plywood, it does just pull at the fibres occasionally. So just a quick sand over, then we can get them fitted on the boat. First stage in the fitting then, get all these little noggins off. Then just need to clean up all around the edge where the rubber seal used to be, because obviously that's kind of left a groove where it's been painted up to in the past. So this board then sits inside there, and like I said, that basically makes it flush, so that as we put that board in, it's got something to screw up to, and it's not trying to pull the board inwards into the void. So all I need to fasten this on with is just 3 or 4 screws, just to roughly hold that in place. So obviously when the front board's on and sealed up, that's got it. I just don't want this wobbling about in between. That's got that then. Next job, get this lined up, a couple of marks on it, and then get it screwed in. Oh, that's that lined up where I want it. Just put a couple of marks around the edge to act as reference points as I come to screw it in. So I want a bit of sealant on first, then some screws, then some sealant on afterwards. Bit of sealant on then. This is where I need about 4 hands. But I'll just struggle on and I won't moan. I've got that one just roughly holding it. I can now square it up slightly one way or the other, get the rest of the screws in. All screwed in, nice and tight. Now just run round with a bit of frame sealant. And then be ready for a little coat of paint. And I think it's looking like it'll be 10 times better than if I just put a piece of board around it. Sealant on then, leave that to dry for a few minutes while I seal the other window up. And then you can probably get a little coat of paint on and maybe even look at just tidying the hatch up as well, just so that matches and painted. That'll be job's a good one. And as if by magic, boats turn round and this side's done as well. Don't know how that happened. Hopefully then you've liked this little, shall we call it a bonus vlog, because as I say, we weren't going to bother recording any of this because we were just boarding up a window. I hope you'll agree in that it doesn't look too bad, and like we say, it's definitely not going to be a permanent thing, but I think at least for the weeks and months until we get round to fiberglassing, it don't look too bad. It doesn't just look like I've nailed a couple of boards onto the side of the boat, and so long as it's watertight as well, that's the main thing. So hopefully you've liked it. I'm sure you're already subscribed and you've clicked the little bell, and therefore you get the notifications when we put each video on. So I think all that's left for me to do is say see you later folks. Bye bye.